At exactly 6:05 every morning, the small silver bell above the door at Mary's Sunrise Diner gave its usual jingle. And every morning, Olivia Parker, a 61-year-old waitress with graying hair pulled into a tidy bun, looked up from behind the counter with the same warm smile. "Good morning, sweetheart," she called gently. The little girl would nod, barely looking up. She couldn't have been more than 9 years old. Tiny frame, oversized backpack, hair unbrushed, eyes tired. Her name tag, dangling from her school bag, read, Emma Rivera. For 3 weeks, Emma had claimed the same corner booth. Alone, she would slide into the seat like a ghost, pull out exactly $1.25 in coins, and softly whisper her order. Just the toast. Olivia had been working at the diner for over 20 years. She knew the rhythms of loneliness. She knew what quiet hunger looked like. And more importantly, she knew what it meant to feel invisible. The first morning, she had brought Emma toast and a glass of water. The second morning, the plate also held a scrambled egg, a small apple, and a milk carton. "The cook made too much," Olivia whispered with a playful wink as she set it down. "Would be ashamed to throw it away." Emma didn't speak. She never did. But she ate. Quickly, quietly, like it was the only real meal she'd had in days. And Olivia never made a big deal of it. She didn't ask questions. She just came back every morning, tray in hand, kindness served with a napkin. The rest of the staff mostly ignored the ritual, until the new manager showed up. On a cloudy Tuesday morning, Olivia placed an extra pancake on Emma's plate, as she'd done many times before. But this time, a sharp voice cut through the hum of the diner. "What do you think you're doing?" Olivia turned. Mr. Caldwell, the new manager, stood near the register, arms folded, his frown deepening. "Just helping out," she said softly. He stepped closer. "We're not running a soup kitchen, Olivia. This stops today." Customers nearby began to glance over. Emma lowered her head. "She's just a child," Olivia replied, a quiet plea in her tone. "She's a customer," Caldwell snapped. "And she pays like everyone else. If she can't, she shouldn't be here." Emma didn't move, but Olivia saw it. The way her shoulders curled inward like she wanted to disappear. She'd only come for toast. She hadn't expected shame to be served with it. The morning buzz of the diner faded as tension took its place. Mr. Caldwell didn't lower his voice. "We can't have people thinking they can just come in here and get free handouts. This is a business, not a charity." Olivia stood straighter, but her voice remained calm. "She's a little girl, sir. She's not asking for anything. You just broke policy," he snapped, cutting her off. "Do it again, and I'll cut your hours. We can't afford sympathy to cost us revenue." At the corner booth, Emma was frozen. Her small hands gripped the edges of the table. She stared down at her plate, no longer eating, cheeks flushed with shame. Customers nearby fell silent. A few glanced at Emma, others at Olivia. But no one said a word. Not one. Olivia bent slightly toward the girl and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart." But the damage had been done. The next morning, Olivia arrived early, only to find her name missing from the front-of-house schedule. "Dish duty. All week. Is this a mistake?" she asked as she approached the schedule board. Mr. Caldwell didn't even look up from his clipboard. "We need more experienced hands in the back. May will take over your section." In the kitchen, steam rose from the industrial dishwasher as Olivia worked with rubber gloves and aching hands. Through the swinging door, she kept glancing at the front of the diner, at the corner booth. 6:05 a.m. sharp. Emma arrived. She slid into her usual seat. Same oversized backpack, same timid presence. But now it was May, a nervous younger waitress, who approached. Olivia watched closely. May placed only a glass of water on the table. No toast. No eggs. No smile. Mr. Caldwell had pulled her aside moments before. From his booth near the window, Mr. Dalton, a regular who had eaten breakfast at the diner for 12 years, stood up, clearly agitated. "Excuse me," he said loudly. "What's going on here?" Caldwell stepped between him and May. "Internal matter, sir. Nothing to concern you." Mr. Dalton hesitated, then slowly sat down, clearly unconvinced. No one else spoke. Not the couple near the door. Not the man on his laptop. Not even the waitress behind the register. Everyone looked away. No one wanted trouble. Not even for a child. Back in the kitchen, Olivia's heart ached. Her hands, raw and chapped from scrubbing pans, trembled with frustration. On her break, she saw May quietly trying to slide a muffin to Emma. But Caldwell appeared again. "I told you," he hissed. "No freebies." May flushed red. It was just going to be thrown out. "That's not your call to make." That evening, Olivia was called into his office. The door clicked shut behind her. "You've got the staff breaking rules now," Caldwell began, leaning back in his chair. "This has gone far enough. She's alone for hours every morning," Olivia said, her voice no longer trembling. "Don't you wonder why? Not my problem. Not yours either. We serve paying customers." Olivia took a slow breath. "I lost my son in Afghanistan," she said. "He died making sure kids on the other side of the world got food and water. You think I wouldn't do the same for a hungry child in my own town?" Caldwell frowned. "Look, I get it. You're grieving. But this isn't about emotions. We can't feed every hard luck story that walks through the door. That's what social services are for." Olivia met his gaze. "Social services didn't bring her breakfast this morning, did they?" He leaned forward. "Focus on your job, or find another one." She stood quietly, smoothing her apron. "I don't need to thank you. But I know my son would be proud." As she stepped out of the office, she saw Emma still in her booth, eyes fixed on the door, as if waiting for someone who never came. And Olivia, tough, weathered Olivia, felt something she hadn't in a long time. A hot tear slid down her cheek. The next morning, Olivia arrived early, earlier than usual. She wasn't on the floor. She wasn't supposed to serve. But that didn't stop her from wiping down counters in the kitchen, sneaking glances through the serving window toward the front of the diner. And then, 6:02 a.m., a familiar little figure entered through the door. Emma. But this time, she wore something different. An oversized military jacket, sleeves rolled 3 times, nearly dragging to her knees. It hung off her frame like a memory too big to carry. But she wore it with care, reverence. Olivia froze, her breath catching as her eyes settled on the insignia patch stitched into the shoulder. She knew that rank. She had seen it before, on the chest of the young man whose photo still lived in her locker. Mr. Caldwell spotted Emma too. His jaw tightened. He walked toward her booth with firm steps, likely ready to issue another cold lecture about unpaid meals. But then, the bell above the diner door rang, and the room fell silent. A man stepped through, still brushing road dust from his shoulders. His posture was impeccable. His boots were worn but polished. The American flag patch on his right sleeve stood crisp against the muted olive of his uniform. His face was drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes, sharp, alert, scanned the room. Before anyone could speak, Emma's voice broke the silence. "Daddy." It was the first word Olivia had ever heard her say, clear, high-pitched, and full of emotion. The girl leapt from the booth and ran toward him. The man knelt instantly, catching her in a tight embrace. His whole frame seemed to soften the moment her arms wrapped around his neck. Then he stood, straightened his back, and surveyed the diner like a man who had assessed countless foreign battlegrounds, now facing something far closer to home. "I'm Lieutenant Daniel Rivera," he said, voice even and steady. "I've just returned from emergency training across state lines." He paused. "And I'd like to know who's been feeding my daughter while I was gone." No one moved. Caldwell shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I-L-E." But Emma turned and pointed. "Her," she said simply. From the kitchen doorway, Olivia stood frozen in place. She still wore her rubber dish gloves, apron damp from steam, hair pulled into a humble clip. Lieutenant Rivera approached slowly, stopping just before her. He came to full attention, and then saluted. "Ma'am," he said, voice low but filled with conviction. "I owe you a debt I can't repay." Olivia blinked, stunned. "I just gave her some breakfast." He turned to address the entire diner, gaze moving across the stunned faces. "My daughter hasn't spoken more than 10 words since her mother deployed overseas 6 months ago. The doctors called it selective mutism. She was terrified and silent. But every morning, while I was away, she wrote to me. And every letter ended the same way. He pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. "There's someone like you at the diner. They give me food without asking questions." Around the diner, heads turned. Some customers looked away in shame. Others watched with growing emotion. Rivera continued. "Our regular childcare fell through when I was called in for duty. My sister's car broke down. Emma had to manage alone for 3 days before my family could step in. She came here, sat here, and someone, this woman, fed her, spoke to her, cared enough to notice." Caldwell had gone pale. His previous confidence now reduced to silence. Rivera handed Olivia the piece of paper. "She wrote this for you." Olivia unfolded it. Written in crooked letters, the note said, "Thank you for the pancakes. They made me remember Mom's." Her hand flew to her mouth. Her son used to write her notes like that, before his final deployment. Lieutenant Rivera reached into his bag. He pulled out a small, tightly folded triangle of fabric. "This flag flew over our base in Missouri last month. I'd be honored if you'd accept it." "I couldn't possibly," Olivia whispered. "Please," he said, voice soft now. "Some battles are fought with weapons. Others are fought with eggs and kindness before sunrise. But they both save lives." Emma walked up to Olivia and wrapped her arms around her waist. "You smell like my mom," she whispered. It was her longest sentence in months. And Olivia, for the first time in years, let herself cry. For a few long seconds, the diner stood in stunned silence. No clatter of plates. No scrape of chairs. Just the quiet hum of truth settling into every corner of the room. Lieutenant Rivera stood tall beside his daughter, still in her oversized jacket, still clutching Olivia's apron like a lifeline. Olivia held the folded flag close to her chest, her rubber gloves still on, as if kindness didn't need to change uniforms. Then something remarkable happened. Mr. Dalton, the old regular with the weathered face and silver crew cut, stood from his booth near the window. He slowly removed his worn cap, revealing a veteran's buzz cut faded into white. "I served 40 years ago," he said, his voice gravelly but clear. "And I never saw courage like yours, ma'am." He placed the cap over his heart. A moment later, May, the younger waitress who had tried to help Emma earlier, stepped forward and gently set a fresh plate of pancakes on the table. This time, no one stopped her. "I made these myself," she whispered to the girl. Then the applause began. Soft, hesitant at first, from Mr. Dalton. Then from a woman near the counter. And then the whole diner stood, clapping slowly, reverently. Not for drama, not for spectacle, but for the quiet bravery that had unfolded before their eyes. Caldwell stood awkwardly by the register, unsure whether to stay or leave. The manager who once barked about rules now found himself voiceless in a room filled with something he couldn't command. Respect. Just then, the diner's owner, Mrs. Lillian Grant, burst through the front door, her purse still slung across her shoulder, clearly called in by one of the staff. She scanned the room and walked straight to Olivia. "I heard everything," she said, loud enough for all to hear. "And let me make one thing clear." She turned to Caldwell. "You're no longer in charge of staff scheduling." He opened his mouth, but she raised her hand. "Save it. I built this place to serve good food and good people. If someone like Olivia can feed a child and restore her voice, then she can do whatever she wants in my diner." The customers applauded again. Mrs. Grant turned back to Olivia. "Your job is waiting full-time, with a raise, and the authority to make sure no child leaves here hungry." Olivia blinked, speechless. Then she looked down at Emma, who smiled for the first time since she arrived. It was small, but real. The kind of smile that can change the course of a morning or even a life. She didn't need pancakes anymore. But she stayed and ate every last bite, surrounded by warmth, by safety, by something that had once felt impossible. Belonging. And for the first time in weeks, the booth in the corner wasn't a place of silence. It was a seat of honor. 1 week later, the morning sun filtered through the windows of Mary's Sunrise Diner, casting soft gold onto the polished floor and the familiar corner booth. But something was different. A small bronze plaque had been mounted on the wooden frame of the booth. It read, "Here sat someone who said nothing and taught an entire diner how to listen." At 6:03 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. Emma entered, hand in hand with her father, Lieutenant Rivera. She was still wearing the oversized jacket, but this time it wasn't armor, it was a badge of pride. Her hair was brushed. Her face was brighter. and she walked with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. Olivia greeted them at the table with a smile. "Your usual, Lieutenant?" she asked. He nodded. "And hers?" The corner booth, once a quiet space where a little girl tried to disappear, was now filled with light and laughter. Emma spoke in soft sentences. Not many, but enough. Enough to know that healing had begun. Customers around them smiled, offered waves, even kind words. May refilled their coffee with a wink, and Mr. Dalton tipped his hat with solemn respect. And pinned proudly to Olivia's apron, just above her heart, was the small folded flag gifted by Lieutenant Rivera. It seems tight, its meaning infinite. She no longer needed to explain herself. She had shown the world what kindness looked like when no one was watching. When their meal was done, Emma slid out of the booth and handed Olivia a folded note. Inside, written in neater handwriting than before, it read, "Thank you for helping me remember what love sounds like." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, but they were not the same tears as before. These were soft, grateful, and filled with something she hadn't felt in years. Peace.